And today we are really hosting the big man himself. And our mate butcher his second name, so I'll stop with Ernesto for now.
Thank you,
So
Roger.
this will be the right chance for him to help us pronounce his name officially. Ernesto, welcome to our Dev Hour, which can be a Dev 2 hour, but for you to be a Dev Hour for now, since you only have 1 hour for us.
Yes.
All right. Some housekeeping rules. We requested you to send in some questions, and you've already sent in the questions. But in case you need to ask some questions and really have time before the hour elapses, feel free to ask them in the Q&A section, and we shall be able to get to these. Otherwise, my name is Roger Kawesa. Can say in the client space of Tunga. Viola, take on the floor.
All right, thank you for having me, Roger. It's good to have the big boy, I'd say, and big girl, but there's none. So welcome, Ernesto. I will get right into it. For someone that's joined Tunga for the first time, that's never had the story, what would you tell them? What led to Tunga? How did you end up here?
Cool. Well, first for you, Roger, my last name pronounces as spruit in Dutch.
Wow.
And it means Brussels sprout. It's a vegetable. Not very tasty, but
I also love that vegetable, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll bring some for you next time I come.
Is that the same way I pronounce group in Dutch?
Similar, but not the same. Okay.
All right, good.
So maybe interesting, interesting to tell, because what is the story of Tunga? Well, basically what happened was that I was working in a tech startup in an incubator here in the Netherlands. My startup failed miserably. But one thing I noticed when working on that startup is that we were all struggling to find good quality software developers. And at one point I just had an epiphany. Because before that, I'd been working for a Dutch NGO who had been active in Africa. And I thought, I just somehow had the idea that I thought, hey, there's a lot of demand here for good software professionals, and there's not really being done so much to actually link the Africa-based software developers to the market here. So I recognize this as an opportunity to build a good business, and at the same time to create some good opportunities for youths in African cities. And that was when I started shopping around with the idea, and then I ran into a Dutch company called Butterfly Works, and they were had already been setting up IT schools around Africa. So these were schools under the umbrella of We Are Bits, and they provide free digital skills education to youth in African cities. And they had already a lot of alumni. So they said, hey, we have the alumni, but they don't already not per se have good access to high quality jobs. So they were very interested in the idea to create a market for African developers. And that's when we launched Tunga together.
Oh.
Weren't you violating a non-compete? But that's besides the point. I think for me, it's we can't pronounce your name, but we can pronounce Tunga. So how did you come up with Tunga?
Yeah, actually, I didn't come up with it myself, but let's say someone we knew in Kenya. We were visiting Kenya at one point early on. And this guy is called Tos Juma. He was one of the first alumni of Nairobits school, and he was already an acquaintance of the people of Butterfly Works. So when we laid out the idea, he was kind of helping us a bit when we visited. At one point, we were sitting in his backyard, and I just, we were drinking a beer and with some people, and I just raised the issue. I said that we don't really have a good name yet, and I just said, I want a name that kind of covers the spirit that we have, and it sounds really African. But of course, I speak some languages, but certainly none of them African languages. And he looked up to the sky, and then he said, and he's, by the way, very impressive person, a tall guy, and he looked up to the sky, and then he said, Tunga. And then immediately I thought, yeah, I just
Hold on. Sorry to interrupt you. Did he know what it meant
at that
any one
point,
point?
at that point, I did not know what it meant.
Was having an alcohol epiphany.
So first I said, this is really a great name, let's do it. And then he explained, you know, what does it actually mean? But it's Swahili for to devise or to create. And later on, I learned that in Lugandan, it means to stitch, I think. So it's an East African name, and I still love it, actually. So I'm very thankful that someone made the effort of coming up with it for us.
Someone once asked me if we run weaving machines, but thank you for that clarity.
All right, you can continue. You can continue, Viola. Yeah, sorry. Let's go to the challenges before I forget. So, what were your biggest fear? Because I know you're starting something new. It's a startup by then. What were your biggest fears when you're starting up then compared to how Tunga is now?
Yeah. So, well, first thing to know is that, you know, I just told you my previous startup failed miserably. So we had a lot, from that I had a lot of learnings, and I decided whatever I'm going to do next, I'm going to first test my assumptions about what's going to work, and then only when I've proven that it works, then I'm going to scale it up. So the most important thing, the most exciting thing was, so first of all, are there enough quality developers in Africa? And our European clients, because Europe is our home market at that point, at least, certainly still is, are European clients interested in working with them, right? So for whatever reason. So and that was the two first assumptions. And my initial idea was to build a marketplace where we just, you know, build an online platform and not be in between. But we soon found out that the cultural and professional differences were that big that we really needed to do more to make the relationship between the client and developer work. So then we progressed into doing more projects. Basically, we are contracting the projects and we are managing the developers. But then still we got a lot of clients who said, hey, you know, we just want to work with the developers, and then we want you to help us find good ones and do the matchmaking and make sure that the relationship works, but we want to manage the work. So then we kind of transitioned into dedicated developers. It was an organic process that took like, I think we started in 2015 with the pilots, and in 2017 with the first real launching customer. And then it all went quite quickly.
So I've not had any fear there. It means everything was okay at that point.
No, of course I had many fears because I put in a truckload of money and also other people's money. And, you know, there certainly have been moments, you know, before we started being cash flow positive, it took some years, and all that time you're working under the risk that it will not happen, right? But we continue to grow, and you need just a certain threshold. When you get above that, then you know you're in the safe zone. Well, actually, yeah, we made it, I think, like 1.5 or 2 years ago. We made that point, and since then I've certainly less fears than before. But the main fears there was, okay, can we get enough scale both from the market side, enough demand, and also from the sourcing side, getting enough developers in the pool.
Yeah, because if you talk about things like fears, of course, how far you've come from, it means you've been able to learn some lessons. Supposing you were to begin at Tunga 2.0, a different company altogether, what lessons maybe can a person, a developer in Africa who wants to be like you, start up their own company in the future, what lessons have you learned from developing Tunga from scratch that you think they can pick up going forward for them?
Well, I think that the most important lesson for me, but also a lesson that is a good lesson for everyone who wants to work internationally, is that before I started Tunga, I had already lived abroad for 7 years, right? So I am from the Netherlands in Northern Europe, and I used to live in Russia for 7 years, which is a totally different culture. And what I learned in Russia and later applied in Tunga is that if you want to work internationally, you have to be open to the other person's culture. Where do they come from? It doesn't mean that you have to accept all oddities from the other person's culture or anything. But if you want to make the relationship work, you have to make clear where you come from, but certainly you also have to understand where the other person comes from. And that's, I think, what's the success of Tunga is built on that idea, the open mind of people and the willingness to bridge differences, right? So if you are a developer who wants to work internationally through Tunga or otherwise, then the most important thing is to have an open mind. Try really to understand what is the world that the other person is living. And I understand that it can be difficult, for example, if you have never been to Europe before or to the Netherlands, and to try to understand what is the world that, what is the lens through which your client is looking at the world. This is very important to try to understand. So any information could be even from watching movies or from, you know, just looking on the internet, a culture guide for the Netherlands, for example, you know, get interested in what is the logic that these clients work with, what do they want, what do they seek, and how, and what can I do, what value can I add, right, from where I come from.
Yeah, true. So this means Viola has to also stay somewhere, maybe in Fiji, to get learn a new culture before she starts a new company. Viola, are you go ahead?
That's a good ambition.
Yes. Speaking of openness, I think I've lived in more than one country, Roger. Thank you. So I'm a bit enlightened. Yeah. So speaking of openness, I know Tunga has worked in Europe for the longest time. Are we extending our openness to the US market? That was one of the questions asked.
Yeah, we already have a number of clients from the US, although we haven't been actively marketing to the US. And currently, because, you know, obviously it's a very large market and it's an attractive market. So we're currently setting up some pilots to do more active marketing in the US. So definitely we want to expand there. But I do have to say that one of the advantages of working with African developers for our clients is if you're in Europe, that it's the same time zone. And that advantage we don't have when we work with US clients. So it can be a blocker, but the clients that we have don't find it a problem. And usually they have some kind of arrangement of adapted working hours because they want to have at least some overlap. But for us, it would be logical first to focus on the East Coast because there the time difference is still more manageable, let's say, than on the West Coast. And so, but we definitely have that ambition set for 2021 to expand US segment.
Would the ambition for 2022 be to go to French-speaking countries?
Yeah, it's not currently in our plans, but there's also not a reason why we wouldn't do it. So far, before when we were more into the project work, we considered it, but we didn't do it because we found that if you want to manage a team of French-speaking developers, you have to have a French-speaking management. And although I speak some French, my mother lives in France, but certainly not enough to manage a software project. But now that we're more into dedicated developers, it would definitely become interesting again. And France is a market that's on our radar, and certainly don't exclude going in there, but also we might, usually how it goes is also, it goes organically, right? So you get one client from there, and then that's a reason to look further into it. So, but so far, it's not on the map yet.
Roger has stayed in France. And the only thing you can say is we.
I knew that was coming. All right. when I joined Tunga, the first thing that struck me is that we had very many developers from the western part of Africa, to be specific, from Nigeria. And one of the questions we received is that what plan does Tunga have for growth plan does Tunga have for Nigeria, or also in Africa in general? Do we have some kind of a plan that will help us grow and go in more and more countries, maybe apart from having more Nigerian developers?
Yes, of course, we have a plan.
Oh.
So firstly, we have published a blog called Best African Countries for Sourcing Software Developers, in which you can read a lot of information about the talent pool in Africa. What countries have a sizable talent pool? What are the conditions there, the working conditions, the business climate, etc. So we have done this internal research, like what countries are most attractive, and what determines whether a country is attractive for us is obviously if the talent pool is sizable, if the English proficiency level, so if people speak good English, is for clients, it's very important. And it's one of the biggest fears of our clients is that the developers do not speak clearly enough, or they cannot clearly understand each other, etc. So speaking, let's say, correct, good pronounced English is very important. So we're looking at countries where English proficiency is already good. And we're looking at countries which have sort of a thriving tech scene, right? So we look at the number of tech hubs and the growth in the number of tech hubs, etc. Yeah.
So interrupt you, but it's no secret that there's a higher risk of political instability in some countries in Africa. How do you factor this into your strategy when you focus on developers in Africa only?
Yeah.
Well, we have developers on the platform from 24 African countries. So the shit would really need to hit the fan to have political instability in all those 24 countries. But it's also but it's also a reality we have to deal with. I think in general the world is very unstable at this moment. We also had Brexit, for example, and now COVID rocking the boat in Europe, etc. So in general, I think diversifying our markets where we have clients and diversifying countries where we have talent, that is a sound strategy. And further, what we want for the developers, basically we want to be an attractive employer for developers, right? So I think that we pay good salaries, but in addition to that, we always pay on time. So we're a very trustworthy partner. We invest in, we have the Tunga Academy at academy.tunga.io, where we have free courses for all developers. We have a testing platform where they can test their skills and see, what they have to invest in, etc. We have events where developers can meet each other. We have the Tunga Slack where developers can interact. We have developer retro so that they can learn from each other, right? So we have all these measures in place to make developers at Tunga feel at home at Tunga, and to be able to advance their career in the broader sense of the word, right? So I think generally speaking, now a developer comes to us because the pay is good, but also because they can work on international projects for international clients with usually challenging technology, etc. And we want to scale that for the developers and make a very attractive environment for them. So that's overall the strategy.
Cool. Can we avoid using the word salary? It may tick off Viola at this point. In a good way.
It's interesting that you mentioned, because I think 5 years ago, the idea of remote work of African software developers, of European clients and American clients was a bit alien. But with the pandemic, with the changing times, right, there's more demand, there's more players in the industry. And in Uganda, I can cite Andela. So there's a question on how are we different from Andela?
Well, we come from totally different places. I think Andela was a company, or is a company, that was propelled by huge amounts of venture capital investment. So their approach was they blew into the market, basically bought a lot of market share, and yeah, needed to scale their organization very quickly, and also their model. And well, that's of course a very luxurious position to be in. On the one hand, it's positive because yeah, you can at once create a place in the market, and on the other hand, if you work like that, you are bound to waste money, so to speak, right? So you will make mistakes, it costs a lot of money. But yeah, we have a lot of respect for Andela, and we're looking at them also, you know, as inspiration to see what's happening in the market and how they do things, and we try to learn from that. Don't really feel competition, by the way, because they're mostly geared towards the US market, as far as I can tell. And even there, we never got into like a competition situation, I think, with them. And as far as sourcing goes, so far also, yeah, I think it's only good that there are companies investing in training developers on the African continent and promoting the profession of software developers. So far, so good. So, but it's a very different organization. We are a small organization. We come from we are growing organically, no external venture capital. Everything we've built yeah, was built like trial and error and then move forward, right? And now we're also reaching a certain scale, certainly not the scale yet that Andela has, but I would say a very serious scale already. But yeah, if you work like that, it's a totally different dynamic, I think, and a totally different culture. But to be honest, I do not know Andela that well that I can tell you what their culture is. But our culture certainly is very pioneering and explorative, and very human-centered culture. And yeah, it's my company that I built, but where I also feel very much at home, and I also want other people to feel at home here. So.
Yeah, so interesting that you mentioned you're simply saying the pool is large enough for any players, even the people on the call can start their own tech outsourcing firms. But which begs the question then, how do we find good software developers? You said we have developers from 24 African countries. I think Africa has about 52 countries. I will be schooled later. Yeah, so how does Tunga then find its developers from the African continent?
Yeah, well, first of all, we exist. So online we publish blogs and this kind of webinars and podcasts, and we have events. So in principle, we get coverage from how do you say it, magazines or online platforms that write about us. So in general, the fact that we exist creates a certain buzz, and we get on a daily basis, we get applications from all over Africa. People want to work for us. So it's just, we have to do nothing for it, right? So we just have the page in the website and the people apply. And more recently, we realized that, hey, we're growing so quickly that we need to be more proactive in finding talent, certainly for certain scarce languages, for example. So we are looking online where we can find good candidates. We're approaching them directly, just sending messages like, hey, do you know about us? Are you interested to work for us? And then and we also try to network, let's say, getting access to the good developers, also asking the existing developer pools, right? Hey, do you know other good developers? You know, different ways to get developers in. And then when they get in, we have elaborate testing methodology. So as a developer, when you apply, so you upload your resume, we make a first judgment, like whether will there be good fit? And this also because, let me look in the Q&A, I think that Ismail Umar asked the question, what have you learned so far from connecting talents in Africa to clients in Europe? So what we have definitely learned is that it's not about whether I like you enough to work for us or not, right? it's whether I can make a good match with the client. And what we've learned is that the clients, especially with remote workers, they generally want meteor or higher level. So if you just don't have enough experience yet, I can let you on the platform, but it will be disappointment for you because it will be very difficult to match you to a client. So when you have done all these tests and you are on the platform and you pass them and you're on the platform, then only it starts, because on the platform we publish opportunities for you and you can express interest in an opportunity as a developer. But then still, it's up to the client to decide with whom they want to work. So we also have people on the platform who are on the platform but still did not get land a job, right? And we don't want that, because in principle, if we let you onto the platform, we want you to get a job because we think you're good enough, right? So we have to make the testing such that we know that if we let you on the platform, that there's a big chance that you can get hired. And that is one of the big learnings that we had, is that it's very important to do this screening thoroughly with a high threshold standard. And then the people who do not pass the test, we don't want to say to them goodbye. So that's why we started the academy and the testing platform. So we can say, okay, you know, there's academy, you can work on your skills there. Then you can test, and when you feel that the test results are up to par again, you can come back. And then when you're good enough, we can, after all, let you on the platform, right? So we want to create an incentive for the developers to invest in their skills and to get good enough, and not good enough because I am an asshole, right? And I have too high standards, but because I know the market, I know the clients, and I know the likelihood that I can link you to a client or not.
Yeah. For me, it's more of a segue for me, because when you say we have very many developers, the question of scale comes in. How do you plan to scale Tunga with the growing number of developers that we are having on the platform versus the clients that we have? That's the question that someone would ask.
Well, I think that the way that we work is very scalable, because most of the things that we do, it's automated and it's self-service, so to speak. So that's very scalable. The only thing that's not scalable is the interviews, and we feel that we do have to have them because yeah, you know, you just have to speak someone personally to make an assessment. But in general, I think that the way we work is already very scalable, and it's also a philosophy that I had from the beginning. I said that everything that we do has to be scalable, and it's a numbers game. So you know, we are constantly reinvesting the money that the cash flow that we generate into scaling up, getting more staff, approaching more talent, approaching more clients, and keep on growing exponentially, because we are growing exponentially all the time. Even now in Corona year 2020, we had a small dip, but still we grew 25%, and now we're already 100% year on year, right? So constantly we're growing triple digit, and yeah, we just want to continue that. And I think, you know, there are 690,000 professional software developers on the African continent, and this amount is growing. So yeah, I think we've got a lot of runway ahead of us to be able to further grow.
Sure.
I see a question, by the way, from Emmanuel Otobo, who asked, what will you say is the average time someone who is new to Tunga platform takes before getting his first engagement? Yeah. Emmanuel, what I can say about that is that it differs, because sometimes we let you on the platform, and actually we find you because we have an opportunity for you, and then it takes you one day and immediately you're placed. And the other time you are on the platform and maybe you get turned down 3 or 4 times. It can happen, and then it will take a little bit longer. But when we see that you struggle to land a job, then either we contact you or you contact us, and then we can discuss why that is, and we can help you maybe to be better also at the application process.
Sure. Yeah, without counting my age, in 2008, well, I do not count the age. In 2008, I was looked to as a junior developer, struggling in life and trying to catch up. And we have very many of those who want to join the platform. If what does it take for a junior developer to succeed on Tunga? Because you mentioned you clients prefer media or senior developers, but is there space? Do you visualize any space for junior developers on the Tunga platform?
Okay, so in principle, we don't work with juniors, right? So we have sometimes clients who want to set up an entire new team, and that includes juniors, and then it's possible. Because junior overall needs the presence of more experienced people near him in the team to be able to grow. But it also depends on how junior you are, because for me, the only thing that counts is results. So if you have very little experience, but you have great test results, for example, then still we will consider you for the platform. So it's not like, okay, if you, so as a rule of thumb, we say at least 2 years practical experience before you can get on the platform. But of course, there are exceptions to that, because if you're exceptionally good, okay, it's possible. But if you are maybe a 5 years experience, but you didn't really work on your skills during those 5 years, or then still you can fail to enter the platform, right? So for me, the thing what really counts is results. And if you are still junior, then I would just advise you to invest a lot in your skills and create a portfolio, maybe on GitHub, to show off your skills. Also try to work maybe on open source or in groups, so that you also can learn from other developers to become better.
Cool.
Yeah, because maybe I want to add to that. So, for example, sometimes we see it go wrong with the client, and the developer has excellent technical skills or technical knowledge, but many clients, and also increasingly, they also look at secondary stuff, like how scalable is your code, how neat and tidy is the code. So they don't just only look at, does it work, or does it get the result that it has, but also, is it well organized and efficient coding, etc., etc. So
code quality, very important. Yeah.
Senior is not just Roger's decade of writing software. You have to do more.
You have to go there.
Ernesto, if you were to, would you quit your full-time job to freelance with Tunga?
Well, my full
This full-time job is paying us, isn't it?
But let me let me tell you seriously. Let me tell you seriously. If there is one type of work that is suitable for remote working, it's software development, right? And it's well-paying work, and it's intelligent work. When I was, let's say, young, around 20, which unfortunately is already some time ago, if I would have the opportunity, then I would definitely have become a software developer, because it gives you so much freedom to do interesting work in a location and in a setting that you find interesting yourself. So probably if I would have had that opportunity, or maybe it passed my path back then, I would now not live in the Netherlands, but I would live on a Caribbean island under a palm tree or something like that, coding.
Fiji?
Yeah, well, Fiji, yeah, maybe. I think time zone wise, not the best market to be in, but let's say. In that sense, I could say, yeah, it's a very attractive career to go into, both in terms of being able to, make good money for yourself and for your family, but also to organize your life in a way that suits you well. So yeah, definitely.
Interesting.
Don't quit your job, huh?
Oh, you don't want to go there, do you? All right. There's been a pain point lately with the payment company that Tunga is using, which is Payoneer, for payments. Developers have been having issues, and some have come out wondering, does Tunga have a plan to change from this payment platform to a different payment platform? Since Payoneer has recently made changes, they are more strict. Honestly, last week I had to apply for my Payoneer card, true story. I was told, get a picture, take a picture of yourself holding your passport, ID, or whatever, and the current date. So in my mind, I'm wondering, how am I going to do this? I'm holding two documents. Until I remembered, yes, I have, my camera has a timer, and I use that. And I'm like, it's too much work, but it's a financial company. So I understand going through all that pain, and sometimes you may order your card and your card never comes until you use maybe DHL or FedEx. So does Tunga have plans to use a different payment platform apart from Payoneer?
Well, the short answer is yes. I do want to say something in defense of Payoneer, is that you know, the laws in at least in European countries, I don't know about other parts of the world, but in European countries surrounding anti-terrorism legislation and that kind of stuff, and financial transactions are becoming stricter and stricter. So they just have to do this shizzle because some lawmaker has decided that they have to, right? So it means it's just it's called the know your customer legislation or rules or regulations. So they have to be able to conform. They have to add all this stuff you have to do. But you know, I have a bank account for my children here in the Netherlands. And yesterday I had to go to the bank to with identification with my youngest child because they didn't believe that the bank account was actually his. I don't know who makes this up, but you know, so you open a bank account, you do all the formal stuff with the passport and anything, and then all of a sudden, 2 years later, you have to prove again. A child has to prove again that they are, you know. So this it's just something happening. That being said, you know, the history with this also is that when we started out, it was very difficult and expensive to pay to African developers from Europe. And I don't know whether you even know this, Viola and Roger, but I think many people don't know. But when we started, we paid in Bitcoin, actually.
Yeah, we had the Roma.
Some people have Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, so because that was by far the fastest and most efficient way of doing it. That didn't, but at that point you also had a service. I forgot what, I think it was called BitPesa, which could be used easily also to convert it back to local currency. So it worked very well. Well, that service ceased and Bitcoin became a little bit more complex for us to use. For, by the way, because of the same type of regulations. And then we had to switch, and we switched to Payoneer because at that point it was, yeah, by far the easiest solution. Now we are already a few years down the road, and you know, we generate the payments automatically, right, on the platform. So if I want to change the payment provider, we have to make significant changes to how the Tunga Works platform works. And we definitely at this moment doing a feasibility study on expanding the payment options. But it's also not something you have to understand that I can do overnight. I cannot just wake up and decide to add another payment flow and then that's it. But certainly now you have TransferWise, or now I think that they changed the name into Wise. We have Flutterwave on the market. So we're definitely looking into at least expanding the number of payout options that we use, and we will implement them, I think, probably somewhere before the end of this year to be on the safe side. So we're working on it, but this is just also for you to understand so how these things go. This is something that's constantly in development, in flux, and you have to find the time and the resources to make improvements to it. By the way, I just want to say hi to Lawrence. Great for you that you are on the show, Lawrence, and thanks for your comment. I hope everything is well.
Yes, hi, Lawrence. I think the developers have had it, and no need to worry. You'll have other methods of payment because I know it's very crucial. We talk about money. People are always skeptical.
Salary, money.
Yeah, they ask questions. Yeah, stop that word, Viola. No salary word. All right. I think we're done with the questions we had from the developers, and we're going in our Q&A section. I know you were answering some of the questions in Q&A, but some of them were unanswered. And Viola, feel free to answer some of the questions because some could be operational, and it also gives time for Anessa to take a glass of water as well.
Thank you.
Well, very cool. So, Bagal, actually, since you're head of talent, this could go to you. What are the most requested tech stacks among our clients in Tunga? Because you've been working. Mhm.
Offhead, I would say PHP, the framework Laravel, front end, I would say Angular, React. I'd also want to mention .NET. It's quite popular. I think that's what I can say offhead. Yeah.
Okay, .NET is a surprise because C# has never been. All right, cool. Who am I
Yeah.
to judge?
There's actually a high demand for .NET.
All right.
Absolutely,
Cool.
yeah.
Interesting. Someone called Nokia 2.4. That's a phone, or okay, let's assume. All right, Nokia 2.4 is asking, I'm interested in working at Tunga and revisiting what I learned some time back through the Tunga Academy. Okay, now my screen has gone to something else. I'm scrolling back up. I'm reached. Will I get the opportunity after finalizing my studies? I think he's still a student.
Well, it's a little bit difficult to assess, right, from where we stand now. But I think it's very good that you are investing in your skills, and if you don't do that, you will get nowhere for sure. And again, there's always, when we say no, it's not final, right? So there's always opportunity to go for another attempt. But it's very important that if you got, let's say, not yet got let on the platform, that you understand why and what are the kind of skills you have to work on. Because, for example, communication is also very important. You being able to express yourself clearly, express your ideas clearly, be efficient in how you answer a question, for example. And we have guys and sometimes girls, but mostly guys, I say, who are have great technical knowledge, but just don't manage to make the connection with the client, right? Because of the communication. So, and this starts, by the way, with a good internet connection, because this is also something that sometimes surprises me, that sometimes you have people coming to an application interview, and then they didn't make sure they're not on time, or they didn't make sure that the internet connection is rock solid, right? And these are things that are so easy. Those are the easy things, right? So the difficult stuff is when you go in depth with the client, but you have to make sure that all that stuff is in place, because you have to imagine, what would the client think, right? If you're going to hire someone, what kind of impression do they make? And you want to make a professional impression, so make sure that the internet is good, that you look well, maybe I should have shaved, but that you look neat, etc. So.
Cool. All right.
Interesting, actually. I know we've asked how to join Tunga, but what makes people unsuccessful with Tunga?
What makes people successful? Unsuccessful.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like that question. I'd rather turn it around.
So what makes people successful at Tunga?
Yeah, well, when you are a software developer, I think that what makes you successful, well, first of all, you have to have the technical skills, right? You're being hired to be a software developer, so you have to know your language or framework that you specialize in. But apart from that, what's very important is, like I said, communication, being clear and effective in communication, but also be human, right? So make a human connection with the other person, especially because you're remote. So people want to, basically, they want to get to know you a little bit, because they put faith in you. You're somewhere else, you're from a different culture, you look different, right? So in general, it's important for both sides, by the way, to invest in the relationship and to get to know each other better. And for that, you need communication, you need presence, show yourself. I think problem-solving skills are very important, and also being proactive. So not wait for a problem to manifest, but you know, also take the initiative to anticipate problems, to say to the client, hey, you say we should this, but maybe isn't it a good idea to do it the other way? Because I think one thing that is very different, generally speaking, if you look definitely at Dutch clients, but also other European countries versus African developers, is that in Africa, people are more used to a very difficult word, hierarchical,
Hierarchy.
to hierarchy, right? So
That word.
you don't question authority. This is a little bit more the motto in African countries. I'm just generalizing, right? But overall speaking. And whereas a Dutch client is very egalitarian culture in the Netherlands, and they expect you to disagree with them, right? So they see, if you disagree, they don't see it as disrespectful, but they see it as you are trying to help get the best outcome. So this kind of stuff is very important. Take an active stance in your relationship and really try to understand what is the end goal of the company and contribute to that. So if you have these traits, I think you're really set up for success. And also have a certain eagerness, right? So have a hunger for improving yourself, have hunger for success. Yes.
Interesting. There's a question here by Ismail, and they're asking, will Tunga in the nearest future consider other job types aside from development related roles, like server administration, DevOps roles, product managers, or specialists? That's quite simple.
Well,
it's a demand supply kind of thing at the end of the day, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
if the demand
exactly.
is there, and
so let's say certain roles, for example, like product manager, we find that clients prefer to have that role in-house, right? So it's strategically so important to them that they want to keep it close, let's say physically close to them. So that's not the type of role that I would expect to see more on the platform. But server administration and DevOps roles, I think we've had these requests in the past. So yeah, certainly not excluding that it will happen, but it's not as frequent as traditional software development roles. But I think it's already happening from time to time. And a specialist is sort of too general for me to really comment on. But in general, you could say, because sometimes it's also design, for example, it happens. But overall, the bulk of the demand is still in software development. Right? So.
Okay, interesting. Viola, do you have any in your Q&A there? Okay.
Not really. I think we've exhausted most of the questions that have been raised by the attendees.
Yeah, because some of them seem to be a little bit tricky to answer to, and lack of a better word. Okay. Wow, we are 11 minutes to top of the hour. Maybe let me throw in one question from Juma, who was kindly asking. So someone who is kind, I always request them. All right, Juma, you're asking, kindly wanted to inquire if there are any instructors that would assist at the academy in case of any question arises or in case of any assistance needed. That's the Tunga Academy, right? I would assume.
I think Viola is in a better position to answer that question.
Viola?
So I would say at the moment, there's a provision for discussion, and there's an academy team that follows up with the activity and they can follow through. But I wouldn't say there's someone who's actively waiting for you to ask questions. But if you left them, they would be responded to. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is, by the way, in general, I think with Tunga that we try to have a high service level to our clients, but also to the developers. And that we're open to all kinds of questions. And I think overall we tend to try to answer everyone and help everyone as far as we can. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Unfortunately, guys, you can't go more further than we have today. Yes.
Can I say one thing about the academy?
Okay, please do. Yeah, thank you.
Actually, you can send us questions. Usually me and Alex are always on the platform to answer questions through groups, discussion boards. Most of the courses have groups or discussion forums. Or you can just slide me a DM or Alex. We're always there to answer questions about the courses.
True, true.
I want to
All right,
say one thing,
thanks,
Roger, if I may.
I was going to you are done closing the show with something special I've kept from you, but
Okay.
you can complete with that. You can complete with that.
Okay, I just wanted to say that unfortunately, due to COVID, I've not been able to visit Africa for more than a year, but I'm happy to tell that yesterday I booked my first ticket again.
Oh.
And I will be in Kampala the last week of May, and we will also be opening our new Tunga hub there, which is a place where we have our office, but also where developers are welcome to work. So for the Ugandan devs, please keep an eye on that, because yeah, we plan to have some opening facility there. And then for Nigerian devs, we also plan to open a hub in Nigeria before the end of the year. So yeah, it's a very nice development, and also hope to be able to visit Nigeria before the end of this year.
Oh, that's perfect. All right, guys, in case we have missed your question, feel free to follow up on our Slack channel. We are more than open to answer any of the questions. The remaining questions are more of I am doing this software. I have the software stack. How can I succeed? Those are questions we can answer within as time goes on. The more operational questions. But now, Ernesto, before you go, the lighter note. People would like to know, what does Ernesto like to do out of work? What does the CEO of Tunga enjoy doing out of work apart from bossing around Viola?
Well, I'm a big football fan, and I actually spent a not healthy amount of time on the local football club here. So I live in Rotterdam, and we have 3 professional football clubs, including Feyenoord, which is the biggest one. But I'm a volunteer at the VOC, which is one of the oldest clubs actually in the Netherlands. And there I am a coach, a trainer, and I'm the head of scouting football talent. So I spend a lot of time working with young football talent here in the Netherlands. And I would say that's my main thing what I spend time on outside of Tunga. Further, I have a dog called Frankie, named after Frankie de Jong, the football player. And I spent quite some time with him walking in the woods. And because of my times in Kampala, I've kind of became a Boda fan. And I've just last week I've bought a scooter, which will be delivered beginning of June, and I plan to do a lot of scooter trips through the Netherlands this summer.
At some point, I thought you're saying it's going to be delivered to Kampala for us.
Yeah, that would be really great. But maybe I will become here the local Boda driver in Rotterdam. Yeah.
Tunga. All right, thanks a lot, Ernesto. It has been a wonderful hour with you, and hopefully next time you'll come back in a new version. My co-host, my lovely Viola, it's a pleasure meeting you, and the invisible Lynn behind the mic as well. Lynn always behind the mic. I'm Rogers always. Thanks for your time, and bye for everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.